there are these two young fish swimming along, and an older fish comes swimming towards them, and he says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" The two young fish keep swimming, and one turns to the other, and he says, "What the hell is water?" You see, in America, we don't realize that working hard is actually overworking because we've been swimming in it all our lives. He calls it workism is the new religion. Welcome to the Live Truly Free podcast.
George, did you write that story to get ready for this podcast today?
No, honestly, it's brilliant, right? It's from David Foster Wallace, gave a commencement speech years ago at Kenyon College, and that was his little intro. But it really fits not only what he was talking about, was kind of what we're talking about today.
Okay, and so to get into what you were actually saying there, don't I have to work hard? I thought the whole point of this was you have to work hard so that you can get the most out of your life, like enjoy nice things, go on vacations.
And so do millions of other Americans. And it's been that way a very long time. But there's been a shift. So you told me off camera, you told me about the most recent week. You took a few days off and then you come back to work. Describe some of that experience for you.
Yeah, so I took off just one day. I took off Monday. I ended up flying out on Friday to go visit my parents. And then I come back on Monday, and I knew we were preparing for this episode. So I didn't check my email first thing when I got back on Monday because I was like, I took the day off. I can just check it tomorrow. Little do I know, I sign on in the morning, and I have a urgent meeting that got added to my calendar while I was gone. And then I'm freaking out for the first 30 minutes of the morning, just waiting to see what this urgent meeting is for after PTO, which is kind of like, I feel like everybody's worst fear when you take off of work and you actually unplug from it for a second. Is like, you're going to come back to an urgent meeting and you're not going to know what's going on.
And the reason you didn't check your email was because we talked about that in a previous episode where you were on vacation, you came back like at 2 a.m. and you were checking your work email, right?
Yes. The first time I took PTO, like ever in my life, the first time I got paid to go on vacation, right when I got back, I started looking at work just to make sure, everything was okay and I still had a job.
Right. Okay. So you're all stressed about the urgent meeting and all this stuff. And then it just compounds and you've had a crazy week, right?
Exactly. And now playing catch up from that whole time of just taking one day off, it makes each day more full of work. And I've gotten 5 days of work done in 4 days, basically.
Right. So there was no point in taking Monday off.
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah, almost. So AJ, I had you share some of those details because this is all corroborated in a MarketWatch article and survey. Gen Z is that generational age group is taking less vacations. It's more stress to take a vacation because of all the things you just experienced. And they feel guilty about it. They feel guilty about taking a vacation. And here's the thing. They don't have as much money as their counterparts in the Millennials and Gen Xers, okay? And they don't have as much, as you call it, PTO, that's paid time off. They don't have as much of that accumulated. And employers know this about them. So they get dumped on. Plus, people are stretched thin right now. I mean, there's more work, less people to do it.
Has it always been like this? I'm just getting into the workforce here. Has it always been so stressful to take time off? Like, I thought the whole point of time off was you get to relax.
Well, in the same survey, so the boomers, no problem. I don't feel good. Well, it's not. So I guess I need to be a little bit clearer. It's like a percentage of the boomers. So it's not like every boomer. It's a few of them that are like, well, I don't feel guilty and I'm taking time off. Keep in mind, they're one step into retirement anyhow. So they're like, I'm pretty much done with all of this. The point is that they were exactly the same way, I think. I think in America today, it's gotten to a place where nobody takes time off. If you check the surveys, you're going to find that in America, there's a lot of unused PTO, paid time off, a guy named Derek Thompson just released a book called On Work. And for the last 4 years, he's been writing about how this, he calls it workism, is the new religion.
How would it be considered a religion? I can't see anybody like worshiping work as if they worship a religion. If anything, I think it'd be like more of an obsession or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we have an obsession for work. So a long time ago, probably post World War II, so in the 50s, let's say, workaholic was a term used to describe people who were obsessed with work and worked all the time. So you have alcoholics who have a problem with drinking too much, and you have workaholics who have a problem with working too much. Well,
Yeah,
you
so
could
it's
say
more of an addiction. That's kind of how I'm viewing it rather than a religion.
yeah, it's an addiction. And so you can go, well, Joe's a workaholic, but I'm not. I know how to manage my work, and I'm not an alcoholic, and I know how to manage my liquor. I'm not. Well, okay, maybe that's true, and maybe that's not. Maybe Joe back in the 50s worked at a company that was obsessed with working. I don't know. And so that was the culture of the company, or maybe it was just Joe's problem. And by the way, AJ, this isn't just isolated to people working in the office or factory workers. Entrepreneurs suffer from this maybe more than the average worker. So fast forward to today, what Thompson is actually calling workism shifts it. And it shifts from being an individual issue or problem to a cultural problem.
So when you say it's part of a culture, is that how he's getting close to religion in terms of it's almost as if America's building a common societal like fabric around work? The foundation of our society is built around the fact that all of us are addicted to working.
Let's go to some other places and set this up a little bit. First of all, another way human beings work is or operate is we all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Okay, so just hold that thought and keep on to that. Now, here's what's interesting. We're watching trends, and Derek's kind of a modern day anthropologist, kind of watching society, okay? And I think his observations are good. He cites a 2019 Pew Research study. In it, it said over 50% of Americans found fulfillment in the work they do. In other words, it brings them joy. In that same survey, only 20% found the same kind of fulfillment and joy in marriage and children.
That's pretty backwards as a society. When you think about it, and like for most of human history, hasn't like your close family unit always been what's brought joy and meaning and kind of passing on what you've learned to the next generation and finding a bond and the closeness of family? Hasn't that been the source of fulfillment before this?
So, AJ, that may seem backwards to you, but, and that's more anecdotal to your life experience, but as a overall working culture of America, working is like my two fish swimming in water. It's like, what the hell's work? You know, you get up, you go, you do your job kind of a thing. This is subtle. All right. Now, the survey I said was 2019. Okay. Right before what? The pandemic, where you take all these people who have been going to work and you keep them locked up in their houses. We know the mental health stresses on people as a result of that, and increase in divorce. And you lock them up with the people they don't find fulfillment with, and you keep them from the people they find fulfillment with. I'll bet it's even worse in 2023 than it was in 2019 when they did that study. And this is setting up workism.
So it sounds like, George, Americans today are making work the centerpiece of their life.
Actually, Thompson talks about that as the creed. So religions have creeds, the belief systems. What do they believe? The centerpiece is work is the centerpiece of identity. What he says is that it quietly governs all the stages of life.
How do you know when you've become that person? How do you know when it's your identity and it's governing the stages of your life?
Oh, that's a really good question. And let's dive into that, because if you make work your identity, like what you do. I'm a plumber and that's who I am. No, you're not a plumber. I mean, that's what you do, yes, but you're way more than that. That's not your identity. Just go to a party and listen to yourself. When you start talking, what do you talk about?
And I bet if you're talking about that work all the time at those parties, you're also going to notice there's not many people seeking you out to talk to you.
Right. So in last week's episode, I talked about how I just mentioned it offhandedly, but I had become a very boring person because I took 76 days off in the year when there's 104 weekend days. So you cease to have outside interest. You cease to have outside anything. And who wants to talk about my plumbing career? Whatever it is. I'm not a plumber, okay? And nothing wrong with plumbers, all right? But I'm sorry, that would be really boring to have someone talk about faucets and, pipes or something, or whatever it is. Can you see this? Is this making sense?
But what if you have a really cool job?
It's the same problem. It may sound cool for a little bit. And I say a party. It could be like a social setting. It could be meeting some friends for lunch or over coffee. And whenever Joe shows up, he's talking about his really exciting, high level government position. He's James Bond or something, and you're like, I'm tired of hearing about this. Did you do anything else? Thing is that human beings are way more than what they do. And so this is robbing us. And honestly, that's where it swings into what Thompson's talking about, workism as a religion.
Yeah. And with that, does he give any reasons why this robbery, as you describe it, begins to happen?
Right. And the robbery, just to be clear, is it's robbing us of who we are in our truest and deepest identity. And it's giving us a substitute, a fake self that we think is real. He does. He talks about, first of all, you got to know some trends going on. So we talked about the trend on fulfillment. Well, another one is there's been over the last 20 or so years a decline in attendance in participation in organized religion, not just attendance, but just participation. And it's significant. It's like 25%. And it's across all religions. It's not isolated to just any one thing. And so remember what I said at the beginning, we're designed to worship something. And if you look across millennia and at cultures, you will see all these cultures worship something. And you may not agree with what they worship, but they did. And so that's the first thing, is that, well, we've stopped going to participating in organized religion, and we're replacing it with work.
So it's almost like, from a Christian background, trying to become the most godly you can, or the best Christian that you can become. Now it's about being the best employee you can become. And that higher purpose is no longer what God's purpose is. It's what the company's purpose is. And that bottom line becomes what you're working for, your higher calling.
Well, okay. It's not that black and white. It's way more nuanced. In other words, this is, as you're talking, I'm just thinking, it's kind of like that old analogy, you were being brought to a slow boil, because if we were dropped in boiling water, would hop right out. It's the frog thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's another trend. And you watch these trends and you go, oh, this is making sense. There's a decline in trust in religion and politics. I think everybody could agree on that. I mean, maybe a few don't, but they're probably in religion and politics. So let me just tell you, there's a decline. Nobody trusts you guys, all right? It's like, so we're transferring that trust to where? The companies we work for. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you're transferring that trust to maybe free enterprise.
I see. And it's because those other two, religion and politics, people aren't seeing them as an actual vehicle of delivering change in people's lives, but they
It's
can see it in their company. The direct effect of what their company's doing or how their company operates affects them on a daily basis.
I don't think that's what people are looking for in religion, in organized religion. I think it goes back to the Pew Research survey. They're looking for fulfillment. That's a human thing. We all want to know we've had impact. We all want to know we've done something fulfilling. We want just a little bit of joy. I mean, it's written, the Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of happiness. There's something else going on. So you've got to watch trends, and you watch trends and you see we're going to go get substitutes for the real thing. There's a decline in community attachments across the United States. And the pandemic accelerated that, but it was already in decline. It didn't create it. It may have pushed it a little faster. So we're turning to our jobs for community. And honestly, I saw that and a light bulb popped on. I've seen that at a number of the companies I've helped lead, where people, it was the business, the company was the life for these people. It was their community. And they're spending 8 to 10 hours, maybe sometimes 12 hours a day, 5-6 days a week with these people. Becomes family.
Yeah, they're the people you spend the most time with. And another thing I can relate to, and I know a lot of people in my generation can, after college, a lot of times you leave and you go to a completely new city from the one you just went to in college and from your hometown.
Right.
And so now that's a whole new place you have to meet people. And who are all the first people that you meet? It's going to be all of your coworkers. And that's who you're going to spend the most time with originally. And especially if you're like learning a new job and that job is at all taxing, like we talked about, how they work the newbies and the young people the hardest, you're not going to have energy after you leave that job to want to go out and force yourself into other connections and force yourself to find other communities when you already have one community and that community is taking up a lot of your time and energy.
And the companies shall remain nameless here, but they have inserted into their core values, family. We're family. Well, what that's code for is you're not gonna have a real family. This is gonna be your family, and you're gonna work like the Dickens 24/7 with your new family. And need I say the technology trends? Thompson hasn't dwelt on that too much, but the technology keeps us anchored to our jobs. Mm-hmm. And bosses, underlings, colleagues have no problem texting you about work issues 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But all of this is a mixed blessing. So we're looking for fulfillment. And so another phrase that Thompson coins is gospel of labor. So this gospel of labor creates what, business owners love, devoted workers, and it creates extraordinary achievements, So Built to Last, Good to Great, Jim Collins books, all this kind of stuff. It's fueling all of that. But for the individual, he says it gives purpose, it builds routine, and it fills time.
And I think that last piece, fills time, is one of the biggest ones, because as people have gotten away from community and as people have come to become more isolated into themselves, you don't realize that if you cut off all these other communities you're a part of, you actually have a lot more time than you expect. So what better to fill that time than trying to, be more productive or get the most out of this new religion that you've joined called Workism.
Or we can go to our other community called Fake Book and have our friends, we have like 10 or 15,000 friends. And now we have virtual reality. It's just more and more of superficiality, substitution. And let me read you what Thompson writes. But devotion to work can leave a wake of anguish. In other words, it leaves a path of huge pain with many feeling overextended, exhausted, and empty.
So if that's the result of it, why are people joining it thinking it's promising fulfillment and community and, a higher purpose? Why are they thinking it's promising the benefits of religion, but really this is the result?
Well, it goes back to exactly where we started when you said, but I thought working hard was all about, making some money, having some vacation, being able to do things I want to do, be able to relax. That's where we all start.
Oh, so it's a false promise, and people start pursuing it before they know it's too late. And once they get to that point of overextended and exhausted, it's almost like you have to experience that feeling to realize that you've been sold a false promise of the benefits of work.
Right. It's a lot of false stuff going on. And we've talked about like money doesn't buy happiness. And we've done the studies on that. And yeah, there's a certain level of income and it solves a lot of pain points. But then that's only like 100,000 a year or something. I say only, but it's not like $10 million. Okay. It's really not that much money when you compare it to what we think it would take. In other words, there are cultures in 2023 all over the world experiencing immense happiness and joy and fulfillment, and not experiencing the prosperity and all of the things that we have in this American culture.
And so it's like the things that you can buy or the life you can afford isn't directly tied to your ultimate happiness and fulfillment, which we have talked about multiple times before.
Right. How do you push back against this? How do you live in this water? How do we swim in this water as fish in this work environment and not swim in that water?
So does the solution to any of this have anything to do with what we talked about last week in those Live Truly Free days? Or can those be at all helping with this workism?
Well, what do you know? Absolutely. Look, I don't know that it's a solution. I think I might say a antidote. So in other words, it's not going to solve this huge workism issue, but I think it can bring some structure to, look, if all you got out of last week's episode were renew days, and you just did one renew day a week, it would push against workism as a religion, a religious thing that you may be sucked into and not even realize it.
So what I talked about at the beginning of this episode, when I took the renew day and then I come back to a storm at work, how do you stop work from, downpouring on your renew days? Because now I'm afraid to take another one.
Right. Well, no, that's really good. So on that renew day, you didn't do anything work related, right?
No. Good.
All right. Now, what did you do on that renew day that was renewing for AJ?
The truth is, it was a travel day. I flew back in.
Okay. All right. So I'm in the stress of airports and all that. So look, there's two elements. There's two parts to the renew day. One, don't do anything work related. So that's the negative. The positive is what you need to do is intentionally, what is something that is renewing for you that you're going to do on that day? And you can find it. I mean, it could be in the airports. I mean, it could be, I have been dying to read this book, and reading this kind of book is so renewing to me, So there's 1,000 things you can come up with, but you have to come up with something. So there's two parts to it. Then you come back to work and you're rejuvenated. Work is going to try to rob all that from you, but it can't touch the renew day. And in the middle of Tuesday, because that was Monday, so in the middle of Tuesday, you can rock back in your chair and go, Monday was great. So to combat workism, find out more about these Live Truly Free days, check out this episode right here from last week. I know you're going to love it. And until next time, may you live truly free.